She was just a cook in the mess hall, flour still dusting her hands when the first gunshot cracked outside the compound gate. Snow fell so thick it buried the barbed wire fences. 12 minutes later, the entire SEAL team defending the base was captured alive. No one remembered her. No one thought she was still breathing. But they didn't know that before she held a spatula, she'd held a rifle. And when the radio crackled with desperate calls through the blizzard, the enemy had no idea. Their final meal had just begun. The wind howled like a living thing. Forward operating base. Whitestone sat 3 miles from the northern border, buried under 17 inches of fresh snow. More was coming. The weather reports had stopped making sense 2 days ago, just static and numbers that climbed steadily downward. -12, -15, the kind of cold that turned breath to ice crystals before they hit the ground. Inside the mess hall, it was warm. Steam rose from industrial pots. The smell of coffee and bacon mixed with the metallic tang of recycled air. Elena Marsh stood at the prep counter, kneading dough for the evening bread. Her movements were efficient, practiced. No wasted motion. She was 31 but looked younger. Brown hair pulled back tight, no makeup. Uniform spotless despite the flour. The only thing remarkable about her was how unremarkable she seemed. "Smells good, Marsh." Lieutenant Connor Hayes pushed through the door, stamping snow from his boots. He was SEAL Team 7, 3rd tour. Face weathered by sun and wind. "You making those cinnamon rolls again?" "Tomorrow morning." Elena didn't look up. If the supply truck makes it through, truck's not coming. Hayes grabbed a mug, filled it from the ancient coffee maker. "Storm's getting worse. We're locked in for at least 3 days. Then no cinnamon rolls." Hayes laughed. It was a good sound in the cold. "You're all heart, Marsh." 3 more SEALs filed in behind him. Marcus Webb, James Ortega, and the new guy couldn't have been more than 22 specialist Dylan Price. They moved like a unit even here, comfortable in each other's space. A family forged in fire. Elena had been at Whitestone for 8 months, long enough to learn their routines. Webb took his coffee black with 2 sugars he pretended not to add. Ortega ate cold sandwiches at odd hours. Price was still trying to prove himself, volunteering for every shit detail. They didn't know anything about her. That was intentional. "How's the perimeter?" she asked, dividing dough into portions. Hayes shrugged. "Quiet. Too quiet, if you want the cliché. But in this weather, nobody's moving. Not us. Not them." Elena's hands paused for just a moment. A flicker across her eyes, something sharp, assessing. Then it was gone. She shaped another roll. "You check the western fence line?" "Yeah." "Why?" "Wind's blowing wrong. Drifts are building on the south side. If they're high enough, someone could walk right over." The 4 men exchanged glances. Hayes set down his mug. "You notice that from in here?" "I notice things." Elena dusted flour from her palms. "It's my job to notice when supplies are low, when patterns change." It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Hayes nodded slowly. "I'll have them check it again." They stayed another 20 minutes, swapping stories, complaining about the cold, normal, safe, the kind of moment that only exists in the eye of the storm. Elena listened more than she spoke. She'd learned that in another life before the discharge, before the name change, before she decided being invisible was better than being dead. Her eyes tracked them as they left. The way Hayes favored his right leg slightly, Webb's hand that unconsciously touched his sidearm when he passed the door, Price's nervous energy, always looking for approval. Warriors. Good ones. But warriors made mistakes. They got comfortable, started to believe that quiet meant safe. Elena had believed that once. The scar on her left shoulder, hidden beneath layers of thermal clothing, throbbed in the cold. A reminder, a warning she'd failed to hear until it was too late. She turned back to the dough, but her gaze drifted to the small window above the sink. Snow swirled in chaotic patterns, the kind of snow that hid things, movement, intent, death. Somewhere out in that white void, something felt wrong. Elena had learned to trust that feeling. She finished the last batch of rolls and set them to rise. Then she walked to the storage closet in the back, the one nobody used, because it was supposed to be empty. It wasn't empty. Behind boxes of expired MREs and broken equipment, there was a small duffel bag. Inside, a combat knife, weathered gloves, and a manual she'd memorized years ago. She touched the bag, just her fingertips, then closed the door. Not yet, but soon. Outside, the wind screamed louder. The lights in the mess hall flickered once, twice, then they steadied. Elena walked back to her station and started prepping dinner. Chicken, rice, vegetables that came from cans. Food for 40 men who thought they were safe. She hoped they were right. But hope, she'd learned, was not a strategy. The attack came at 2,247 hours. Elena was cleaning the last pot when the explosion shook the building. Not close, maybe 200 yards out. The perimeter fence. She dropped the pot. It clattered against stainless steel. Gunfire. Automatic. Multiple weapons. The lights died. Emergency backup kicked in 2 seconds later, bathing everything in red. She was already moving. The door to the mess hall burst open. Ortega, bleeding from a cut above his eye. Contact. North and west gates. Multiple hostiles. He was gone before she could respond. More gunfire. Closer now. Shouts in English. Then shouts in another language, harsh. Clipped. Elena's hands went to her pockets by instinct. Empty. She was a cook. Cooks didn't carry weapons. Former soldier or not, she had nothing. She killed the emergency lights, dropped behind the prep counter. Her breathing slowed, automatically combat breathing. 4 counts in, 4 counts hold, 4 counts out. Training that never really left. Through the window, she saw muzzle flashes, white hot in the darkness. The storm was a perfect cover. You couldn't see 10 feet, couldn't hear anything but wind and gunfire. Whoever planned this knew exactly what they were doing. Voices outside the mess hall. Boots crunching on snow. She pulled herself tighter against the counter, making her body small. They passed without checking inside. Mistake, but it kept her alive. The firefight lasted 8 minutes. It felt like hours. Then silence. Not the absence of sound that would have been better. This was the silence of defeat, of surrender. Elena waited. 5 minutes. 10. Finally, she risked movement, crawled to the window, looked out through the corner where the glass was darkest. Bodies in the snow. 2 of them. SEAL uniforms. And figures moving in the storm. Lots of them. Organized. Professionals. They were binding hands, taking weapons, forcing someone to their knees. Hayes, Webb, Price, Ortega. All of them. Captured. Elena's jaw tightened. She counted the enemy. 12 visible. Probably more in the buildings. They wore white winter gear with no identifying marks. Faces covered. Night vision mounted on helmets. This wasn't a random raid. This was surgical. One of the white-clad figures gestured. The prisoners were hauled to their feet, pushed toward the north gate, into the forest, away from the base. They were taking them alive. That meant interrogation, intelligence gathering. It meant Hayes and the others had maybe 6 hours before things got very bad. Elena stayed frozen behind the window until the last figure disappeared into the trees. Then she moved. The base was compromised. Communications would be down. They'd hit those first. The motor pool was probably rigged or guarded. She was alone, unarmed, and everyone who could fight was either dead or captured. Standard procedure, hunker down, wait for relief. But relief was 3 days out. Minimum. Hayes didn't have 3 days. Elena stared at her hands. Flour still under her nails. Soft hands that kneaded dough and stirred soup. They'd been different once. Harder. Scarred from trigger guards and rough rope. She'd left that life. Buried it. Chose silence and steam and safety. But she'd also made a choice 8 months ago when she came to Whitestone. She'd chosen to stand beside these men, even if they didn't know what that meant. Even if she'd sworn never to fight again. Elena stood, walked to the storage closet. This time, she didn't just touch the duffel bag. She opened it. The base was a graveyard. Elena moved through it like a ghost. The backup generators hummed in the distance, keeping minimal power alive. Emergency lights cast long shadows that swallowed everything. She'd changed. Black thermal layers, dark jacket, gloves. The kitchen whites were folded neatly in her locker. She didn't know if she'd wear them again. The knife was strapped to her right thigh, small enough to conceal, sharp enough to kill. She checked the barracks first. Empty. Blood on the floor near the entrance, drag marks leading outside. Someone had been wounded. She followed the trail with her eyes, reading the story written in crimson. 3 wounded, taken with the others. The command center was worse. Equipment smashed, radios destroyed, satellite uplink torn apart. Whoever led this operation understood American military protocols. They'd eliminated communication before the SEALs even knew they were under attack. Elena tried the backup radio anyway. Static, dead air. She was alone. The armory door was blown open, charges placed precisely on the hinges. Inside, the weapons lockers were empty. They'd taken everything or destroyed it. Even the ammunition was gone. Except, Elena's eyes tracked the room. There, in the corner, behind an overturned desk, a small weapons locker marked training equipment. She pulled it open. Inside, one M9 pistol, 2 magazines, and a survival knife. Not much, but more than nothing. She checked the pistol. Loaded, 15 rounds, plus the spare mag, 30 rounds total, against at least 12 hostiles, probably more. The math was bad. Elena holstered the weapon and stood. Outside the window, snow continued to fall. The tracks from the assault were already disappearing, white powder filling in boot prints like the earth was trying to forget. She could forget too. Stay here. Wait. Survive. Nobody would blame her. Nobody would even know she'd had a choice. Except her. Elena closed her eyes, saw Hayes laughing about cinnamon rolls, Webb sneaking sugar into his coffee, Price trying so hard to belong, Ortega with his terrible jokes and easy smile. They'd taken her in without questions, fed her, protected her, given her a place to exist when she had nowhere else to go. She owed them nothing. She owed them everything. Elena opened her eyes. The decision was made. She went to the supply building, found cold weather gear, the real stuff, rated for negative temperatures, snowshoes, a white camouflage tarp she could use as concealment, water bottles, energy bars. No food for sentimentality. This wasn't about comfort. This was about survival. She packed light. Movement was life. Weight was death. The storm was getting worse. Wind speeds had to be 40 miles per hour. Visibility maybe 30 feet. Good. The weather was her ally now. At the north gate, she found what she was looking for. Tracks. Lots of them. Leading into the forest. They'd been careless. Confident. Why wouldn't they be? The base was neutralized. No reinforcements coming. No witnesses. Except one. Elena adjusted the straps on her pack, checked the pistol one more time, looked back at Whitestone at the warm lights, the promise of safety, the lie of peace. Then, she stepped through the gate. The snow swallowed her whole. The forest remembered her. Elena moved through trees like she'd never left them. Each step deliberate, weight distributed, eyes scanning not for what was there but for what didn't belong. The tracks were easy to follow. 12 sets of boots, 6 sets of prisoners being pushed forward. Blood drops every 10 meters. Someone was hurt worse than the others had realized. She'd covered maybe a mile when the memories started. 6 years ago. Different forest, different war. Call sign Phantom. Reconnaissance specialist. Sniper rated. She'd been good, no. She'd been exceptional. 3 tours. 47 confirmed eliminations. 0 casualties in her unit. Until Jakarta. Elena pushed the memory away. It rose back up like a corpse in dark water. The mission was supposed to be simple. Extract an asset from hostile territory. She'd provided overwatch from a building 700 yards out. Perfect position, perfect sight lines. She'd seen the trap. Seen the second team moving in from the west. Radioed it in. Command told her to hold position. She'd held. 2 minutes later, her unit walked into an ambush. 6 men. 4 died before they reached cover. The shot had come from her blind spot. The one she couldn't cover from her position. The one she'd told command about. The asset was executed on camera. Her unit was scattered. The mission burned. And Elena, Sergeant Elena Marsh, Phantom, the invisible gun she'd been discharged, quietly. With a medical code that meant, we can't prove anything, but you're done anyway. PTSD, the papers said. Combat stress. Unfit for duty. They weren't wrong. She tried civilian life. Failed. Tried drinking. Failed at that too. She was too disciplined even in self-destruction. Finally, she'd found Whitestone, a forward base that needed a cook. No questions asked. No background beyond the basics. A place to disappear. She'd been good at disappearing. But here, now, in the snow with a pistol on her hip and blood in her mouth from the cold, she wasn't Marsh the cook. She was Phantom. And Phantom didn't leave people behind. Elena stopped moving. Ahead, maybe 50 yards out, there was a structure. An old hunting cabin, long abandoned. The tracks led past it. But there were fresh marks near the door. Boot prints. Someone had checked it recently. Rear guard. Elena circled wide, using the trees for cover. Her footprints would be covered by snow in minutes. The storm was her friend. She came up on the cabin from the east. No windows on this side. She pressed against the wall, listening. Nothing. Then a cough. Suppressed but audible. 1 guard, maybe 2. Elena drew the knife. Metal was quieter than gunfire. The pistol was for when subtlety failed. She moved to the front. The door was ajar. Careless, or confident. She could see inside. 1 man, back to the door, watching the trail ahead. White winter gear, rifle slung on his shoulder, night vision pushed up on his helmet. Amateur hour. Elena was through the door in 3 steps. Her hand clamped over his mouth. The knife went between his ribs, angled up. She held him while he thrashed. Counted to 10. Let him down slowly. He was young, maybe 25. His eyes stared at nothing. Elena took his rifle. An AK pattern weapon, Chinese manufacture. She checked the magazine. Full. She took his spare mags, his radio, his night vision. The radio was live. Chatter in Mandarin. She didn't speak it fluently, but she caught enough. They were making camp 2 miles ahead. They'd wait out the worst of the storm before moving the prisoners to a secondary location. Good. That gave her time. Elena dragged the body behind the cabin, covered it with snow. It would be found eventually, but not immediately. She'd bought herself an hour, maybe 2. That would have to be enough. The storm was a living wall. Elena moved through it like smoke. The night vision helped, but not much. Everything was white noise and shadow. She relied on the tracks, on the patterns only someone with training could read. They were tired. The spacing between footprints was getting irregular. The blood drops more frequent. They'd pushed hard from the base, confident in their escape. That confidence would kill them. 2 miles became 3. The forest thinned. Ahead, through the trees, Elena saw light. She dropped low, crawled the last 100 yards on her stomach. Snow soaked through her clothing. The cold was numbing. She ignored it. The camp was makeshift. 3 tents arranged in a triangle. Prisoners in the center, bound and on their knees. Guards rotating watch. Fire pit, but no fire too visible. They were using chemical heat packs. Professional, but not perfect. Elena counted. 11 hostiles visible. 1 missing the man she'd killed. They hadn't noticed yet. She scanned the prisoners. Hayes, Webb, Ortega, Price, 2 others. She didn't recognize base personnel maybe. All alive. Hayes was bleeding from his side. Not fatal yet, but it would be if untreated. Webb's face was swollen. They'd hit him. Probably for asking questions. Elena memorized the layout. Guard positions, sight lines, weapons placements. The slight rise to the west would give her elevation. The wind was blowing east to west. She'd have to compensate. She had 30 rounds, 11 targets. The math was still bad. But math had never accounted for surprise, for fear, for what happens when ghosts start shooting back. Elena pulled back, circled to the west. Found her position a fallen tree with good cover and a clear line to the camp. She settled in, rifle up, night vision down. Now came the hard part. Waiting. She'd always been good at waiting. It was the thing that made her dangerous. Not the shooting any fool could pull a trigger. The waiting. The patience. The understanding that war was 90% stillness and 10% violence. The guards changed shift at 0145. Sloppy handoff. 3 seconds where nobody was watching the prisoners. Not enough. At 0220, one of the guards walked to the tree line to relieve himself. Alone. Back to the camp. Better. Elena lined up the shot. Center mass. Squeezed. The rifle coughed. Suppressed, but not silent. The guard dropped. 3 seconds of confusion. Then someone shouted. Elena was already moving. She fired twice more. 2 guards down before they found cover. Chaos. The camp erupted. Gunfire in every direction. They didn't know where she was. Didn't know how many. Elena fired again. Again. Each shot deliberate. Each shot counted. 8 targets left. 7. Return fire chewed up the snow around her. She rolled left. Came up. Fired. 5. They were grouping up. Bad move. Panic thinking. Elena emptied the magazine. Dropped it. Reloaded. 4 targets. The prisoners were on their bellies now. Smart. Hayes was trying to reach a fallen rifle with his bound hands. 3 targets. Then her rifle jammed. Snow in the mechanism. Chinese guns weren't built for this cold. She dropped it. Drew the pistol. The remaining 3 guards charged her position. Desperate. Committed. Elena fired. Center mass. The first one fell. 2 left. She fired again. Missed. The second guard was on her. She deflected his rifle, brought the pistol up, fired point blank into his chest. 1 left. He was running, back toward the camp, trying to execute the prisoners before he died. Elena ran. Her legs burned. Her lungs screamed. The cold was a knife in her chest. The guard reached Hayes, raised his rifle. Elena fired her last round. The guard dropped. Silence. She stood there, breathing hard. the pistol empty in her hand. Around her, snow fell on bodies, on blood, on the scattered remains of a perfect plan that had met someone who refused to die quietly. Hayes looked up at her, his eyes went wide. Marsh? Elena didn't answer. She was already cutting his bonds. She worked fast. Hands cut free, weapons distributed. The SEALs moved like they'd never been captured, muscle memory and training taking over. Webb grabbed a rifle. Ortega checked the bodies. Price was shaking, adrenaline crash, but he held it together. Hayes pressed a hand to his side. Blood leaked through his fingers. How bad? Elena asked. I've had worse. He looked at her like seeing a stranger. Who the hell are you? Someone who knew how to cook. She handed him a pressure bandage from a dead guard's kit. Apply pressure. We move in 2 minutes. Move where? Away from here. They'll send someone to check when the radio goes silent. Webb stared at the bodies, at the blood in the snow. You did this? Alone? Elena didn't answer. She was already checking the perimeter. Ortega appeared beside her. Marsh, or whoever you are, we need answers. Later. She pointed north. They came from that direction. Base camp is probably another 5 miles. We go south, cut east, loop back to Whitestone. That's 15 miles in this storm, Price said. Hayes is wounded. We'll never make it. Then we die trying. Elena's voice was flat. Or we wait here for the reinforcements and die faster. Your call. Hayes stood, wobbled, caught himself. We move. Marsh leads. They followed her into the darkness. For the first hour, nobody spoke. They were too busy surviving. The storm had worsened. Wind chill was deadly. The cold bit through layers, finding skin, turning extremities numb. Elena navigated by feel and memory. She'd studied the maps of this region during her quiet months at Whitestone. Habit, paranoia, the thing that kept soldiers alive when everyone else died. Behind her, the SEALs moved in formation. Wounded, but functional. They trusted her now. They had to. Trust was dangerous. Trust got people killed. But it was also the only thing worth dying for. At hour 2, Hayes collapsed. Elena called a halt. They huddled in a depression between rocks, out of the worst wind. Webb checked Hayes's wound. Bleeding's worse. He needs real medical attention. Closest help is Whitestone, Elena said. 13 miles. He won't make 13 miles. Elena looked at Hayes. His face was gray, lips blue, shock setting in. She'd seen this before. Jakarta. Different faces. Same ending. Then we carry him. Elena stood. Ortega, Webb, you take first shift. Price and I will scout ahead. We move in 5. You can't just Price started. I can. Elena's eyes were cold. And I will. Because staying here means dying here. Questions? No one argued. They moved again. The forest felt alive. Every shadow was an enemy. Every sound was a threat. Elena's hand stayed near her pistol, reloaded from spare magazines she'd taken from the dead. 23 rounds left. Still not enough if they encountered the main force. At hour 3, they found the first marker. A piece of cloth tied to a branch. Bright orange. Deliberate. Elena stopped. Held up her fist. The team froze. Webb whispered, "What is it?" "Trail marker. They're tracking us." "How many?" Elena studied the ground. Fresh prints. Boot patterns different from the assault team. "At least 6. Maybe more." "We can't fight them," Ortega said. "Not with Hayes down and limited ammunition." Elena's jaw tightened. He was right. They couldn't fight, but they couldn't outrun either. Which left only one option. "Price, you're with me. The rest of you, keep moving south. Don't stop. Don't engage unless you have no choice." "What are you going to do?" Webb asked. Elena checked her pistol. "Buy you time. That's suicide. That's the mission." She looked at Hayes. His eyes were closed, breathing shallow. "Get him home." She didn't wait for argument. Grabbed Price and moved. They found the hunters a mile out. 6 men. Chinese special forces, if Elena's guess was right. Moving in a wedge formation. Disciplined. Focused. Hunting. Elena and Price took position on a ridge overlooking the trail. Price was scared. She could see it in how he held his rifle. Too tight. Finger on the trigger instead of the guard. "Breathe," she whispered. Combat breathing. 4 in. Hold 4. 4 out. He tried. Failed. Tried again. Better. He started. "Doesn't matter. You're here now." Elena sighted down her pistol. "When I move, you cover me. Don't think. Just shoot." "I can't." "You can." She looked at him. "Because if you don't, Hayes dies. Webb dies. All of them. Understand?" Price swallowed. Nodded. Good. Elena shifted position. On my mark. The hunters came closer. 30 yards. 20. Elena moved. She came down the slope like an avalanche. The first hunter didn't even see her. Her knife took him in the throat. The second turned. She fired twice, center mass. Price fired. Wide. Panicked. But it drew attention. The remaining 4 scattered. Textbook response. Elena dropped behind a tree. Return fire chewed bark. She blind fired twice. Not for accuracy. For fear. One hunter broke cover. Tried to flank. Price shot him. 3 rounds. All hits. Good. 3 left. Elena reloaded. 14 rounds remaining. A hunter tried to advance. Elena waited until he was committed, then fired. Headshot. He dropped. 2 left. They called out. Chinese. Elena didn't need translation. They were trying to coordinate. She moved. Silent. Came up behind the first one. He was focused forward. Never looked back. Fatal mistake. Her knife ended him before he could scream. 1 left. He fired wildly. Spraying bullets. Desperation. Elena waited until the magazine clicked empty. Then she stepped into view. He saw her. His eyes went wide. She fired once. Silence. Price came down from the ridge. He was shaking. Looked at the bodies. Jesus, he whispered. Not here. Elena ejected her magazine. Counted. 9 rounds left. We need to move. They rejoined the main group 2 miles south. Hayes was unconscious. Webb was carrying him. Ortega provided security. They looked like walking dead. Elena took point again. No rest. No celebration. Just movement. The storm began to break around hour 5. Visibility improved, which meant they could see better and be seen better. Elena pushed harder. The SEALs matched her pace. They were running on fumes and will. It would have to be enough. At hour 6, they saw lights. Whitestone. Home. They stumbled through the gates as dawn broke. The storm had passed. Everything was white and clean and silent. Medical was destroyed. Elena directed them to the mess hall. It still had heat. Supplies. She set up a makeshift triage. Got Hayes stabilized. The others collapsed where they stood. Webb looked at her. Who are you? Really? Elena was washing blood from her hands. Hers. Theirs. The enemy's. It all looked the same. Someone who used to fight, she said quietly. Bullshit. You're trained. Special operations trained. Was. She dried her hands. Not anymore. Elena looked out the window. At the snow. At the forest where men had died because she'd chosen to act instead of hide. Because I failed once. And people died. She turned back to him. I swore I wouldn't let it happen again. Webb was quiet for a long moment. Then, thank you. Elena didn't respond. Thank you felt wrong. She hadn't done anything worthy of gratitude. She'd just refused to let them die alone. That wasn't heroism. That was just the bare minimum of being human. They came at dawn. Elena heard them before she saw them. Engines. Multiple vehicles. The main force. Coming to investigate why their teams had gone silent. She woke the others. We have company. Webb checked his weapon. How many? Enough. Ortega moved to the window. Counted. 20, maybe more. APCs. Heavy weapons. We can't hold, Price said. No. Elena was already moving. But we can hurt them. She'd spent the last hour preparing. The base had explosives, breaching charges, claymores, det cord. She'd rigged the approach roads, turned the mess hall into a fortress. It wouldn't hold forever. But forever wasn't the plan. Hayes stays here with Price, Elena said. The rest of us spread out. Make them think we have more people than we do. That's insane, Webb said. It's what we have. Elena handed out weapons. Ammunition. We hold until relief arrives. Relief is days out. Then we hold for days. Elena met his eyes. Or we die trying, but we die fighting. The first vehicle crossed the gate at 0645. Elena triggered the charges. The explosion flipped the APC. Secondary charges took out the vehicles behind it. Fire and smoke. Screaming metal. The attack faltered. Confusion. Elena fired. 3-round burst. A man fell. She shifted position. Fired again. Webb and Ortega joined in. Crossfire. Overlapping fields. They'd fought together before. It showed. The enemy recovered. Returned fire. Overwhelming volume. Elena's position disintegrated. She moved. Always moving. Never where they expected. Phantom. The fight became chaos. Close quarters. Room to room. Elena used every trick she'd learned. Misdirection. false positions, sound discipline. The enemy was good. But good didn't matter when they didn't know where to shoot. At hour 2, Webb took a round. Shoulder, not fatal. Ortega dragged him to safety. At hour 3, ammunition ran low. Elena was down to her last magazine, 7 rounds. But the enemy was breaking. She could feel it, the hesitation, the fear of an invisible force that killed without mercy. The final push came at hour 4. A dozen men. Coordinated assault. No more caution. Just overwhelming force. Elena stood in the center of the mess hall, pistol raised. 7 rounds. The door blew open. She fired. Once, twice, 3 times. Men dropped. 4 rounds left. They flooded in. Too many. She fired. 4, 5, 6. 1 round left. A figure appeared in the doorway. Officer uniform. He raised his weapon. Elena aimed. Squeezed. Click. The pistol was empty. The officer smiled. Then, his head snapped back. Blood mist. He dropped. Elena turned. Price stood there, rifle smoking, face pale but determined. "I got him," Price whispered. "I actually got him." The remaining enemy broke, ran. They'd lost too many, faced an enemy they couldn't understand. Silence. Elena lowered her empty pistol, looked at the bodies, the blood, the cost. Outside, helicopter sounds, real ones this time. American. Relief had arrived early. Webb limped to the window. "It's ours. Army medevac. Reinforcements." Elena sat down. Her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. She'd been running on adrenaline and fury for 8 hours. Now there was nothing left. Ortega approached, put a hand on her shoulder. "You saved us. I just refused to let you die alone." Same thing. It wasn't. But Elena was too tired to argue. The investigation took 3 days. Officers came, asked questions, took statements, looked at the bodies, the evidence. The impossible story of a cook who'd killed 27 enemy soldiers to save 6 men. Elena told them everything. Her real name, her service record, Jakarta, the discharge, the choice to disappear. They listened, took notes, shared glances she couldn't read. On day 4, they told her she was free to go. "Go where?" she asked. "Anywhere. You're civilian, no charges, no issues." "What about them?" She nodded toward the recovered prisoners. "They're being debriefed, then returned to duty." Elena nodded. That was good. They deserved to go back, to finish what they'd started. She didn't. She packed her things. Not much. She'd learned to travel light. Before she left, she went to the medical bay. Hayes was awake, bandaged but alive. "Leaving?" he asked. "Time to go. You saved our lives." "I was just doing what needed to be done." Hayes studied her. "I've read your file. Real file. You were the best." He reached out, shook her hand. "Thank you." Elena left before she had to respond. Outside, the snow had stopped. The sky was clear, the kind of cold blue that hurt to look at. A jeep waited to take her to the airfield. From there, anywhere. She looked back at Whitestone one last time, saw the mess hall, the place where she'd tried to be someone else. It hadn't worked. You can't bury what you are. But maybe that was okay. Elena climbed into the jeep. Didn't look back again. The driver was young, nervous. "Where to, ma'am?" "Wherever the next base needs a cook." He looked confused. "You're going back?" "Someone has to feed them." It was true. And it was a lie. She wasn't going back as a cook. She was going back as someone who'd remembered that being invisible didn't mean being helpless. That walking away from war didn't mean you couldn't fight when it mattered. That sometimes, the most dangerous person in the room was the one nobody noticed. 3 months later, Webb sat in a bar in Virginia Beach, off duty, trying to relax, failing. Ortega slid into the booth across from him. "You heard?" "Heard what?" "Whitestone. They're recommending Hayes for commendation. Full write-up of the attack." "Good. He earned it. They're not mentioning Marsh." Webb straightened. "What?" "Classified. The whole thing. Her involvement is redacted. Officially, we held the base with just our team until relief arrived." "That's bullshit. That's orders." Ortega sipped his beer. "She's gone anyway. Disappeared again. Nobody knows where." Webb was quiet. Then, "She's still out there. Somewhere." "Yeah. Good." They drank in silence. 2,000 miles away, at a different forward base, a new cook reported for duty. She was quiet, efficient. Nobody paid much attention. Just another face in another kitchen. But the soldiers who ate her food felt safer somehow, like someone was watching their backs. And on cold winter nights, when the wind howled and the snow fell thick, they told stories about a base in the mountains, an attack in the storm, a mysterious figure who fought like a ghost. The details changed with each telling. The number of enemies grew, the actions became more impossible, but the core remained. Someone who couldn't be killed, who wouldn't stay down, who appeared when you needed them most. They called her the Winter Ghost, Phantom, the cook who saved them all. And in kitchens across a dozen bases, a woman with brown hair and quiet eyes heard the stories and said nothing, just kept cooking, kept waiting. Because war never really ends, it just sleeps. And when it wakes, someone needs to be ready. Someone needs to remember that the most dangerous weapon isn't the one you can see. It's the one you forgot was there. Every winter, the story grows. Every deployment, another whispered rumor. Did you hear about the cook at FOB Whitestone? No, tell me. And they do. Again and again, until it becomes legend, until it becomes myth, until the truth and the fiction blur so completely that nobody remembers which is which. But somewhere, in a kitchen on a base whose name doesn't matter, Elena Marsh smiles and keeps cooking, because that's what ghosts do. They wait, they watch, and when the snow falls thick enough to hide the world, they hunt.